morning's topic is team building. Now, I'll tell you a little story. Imagine you walk into work on your very first day. You sit down with your boss and you're going over, strategies and goals and what do the next few months look like. And one of the first topics of conversation is this. Daniel, we'd like for you to talk to a psychologist. And I said, dadgum, it took years for the last place to find out I was crazy. And then the next thought was, I don't know that you're going to want to learn what you find out. But we talked a little more about it and came to learn SPN for the past 5 years, I think, has been working with a great executive coach and an organizational psychologist. She works with team building. I'll introduce her in just a minute, with Alison Mallard. And so with some apprehension, I called to set up the appointment, and we talked through some of the things, and we talked through a tool you're going to hear a lot more about this morning called Berkman. And my confidence was not increased when I first got up to take the test. This involved something like an hour of questions that asked me things like this. Of these 4 professions, which would you rather be? A dentist, a florist, a choreographer, or a businessman? And it asked you to rank the next 2. And that asked me that about 100 times in random combinations. And I thought, really? We're going to learn something from this? Okay, well, I'll humor these good folks at SPN. I'm happy to have this job and work with this team, so we'll do it. Little did I know what impact this would have on me as an individual, and more importantly, as we went to grow the team and the SPN team, how valuable it would be to helping us hit our stride much faster. As you know, we cannot be successful, really, at the highest levels without really high-performing teams. And it takes a while to get there. This is not something that happens overnight. But what we learned was by going through an intentional, intensive team-building process, and our speaker this morning will talk with you a little about it. This is one tool in a number of opportunities that are out there. We use work with, but going through some exercise and some intentional plan to really focus on team building speeds up so quickly and so powerfully so that you can focus on the things that you need to do. You've got a team around you and behind you and alongside you that allows you to really hit that stride and really hit your goals. After all, we have freedom to say for this country. We've got to do an example of what could be for you. So as you're watching and watching our SPN Development Team here go through this Berkman exercise right in front of your very eyes, I hope that as you listen to it, you'll think about what might this look like from my team? How could I do something like this to help build and grow and increase the results of our team even faster? So without further ado, I'd like to welcome to the stage the wonderful person who has helped us all through this, Dr. Alison Mallard.
Pleasure and an honor to be here, and I'm really looking forward to spending the next hour or so with you as we talk about how you can build high-performing teams with your organization. So to help you warm up and to help you get in the right frame of mind, I'm going to invite you to think about a time when you were part of a high-performing team. And what I mean by that is when you came together with a group of people who were dependent on each other to achieve some kind of ambitious goal. And I'd like you to think about what it was like to be on that team, what you were able to accomplish, and just the feeling of reaching that goal. Now, it may be that you're on a team right now that's like that, and if you are, congratulations, and the work that we'll do today will help you elevate that performance even more and help you sustain that performance over time. If you have to look back in time just a little bit, that's okay. Or you might have to go way back and think about a time you were on a sports team, or that time you got dropped off in the middle of the forest with a match and a compass with your group and had to find your way back home. So I'm just curious, I like to learn from the groups that I'm working with. How many of you can think about a team that you were on, whether it was now or in the past, that felt like that high-performing team? All right, excellent. A lot of you, excellent. Okay. So now we're going to take it one step further, and I invite you to think about how you would describe that experience. Think about one or two words, or think about a phrase that you would use just to capture what that was like. All right, now when I say go, I'm going to ask you to turn to your neighbor and share with your neighbor that word, those words, or that phrase. And we're not going to take the 30 seconds for you to share with your neighbor what that was like, and for you to hear from your neighbor what that was like. And then we're going to hear from a couple of you. All right, ready, set, go.
I was not prepared for this.
Okay, let's bring it back to the room. And here I am in the middle. Now, like I said, I really like to learn from folks as I do this. So I'm going to see who is feeling brave enough just to give me that we don't want to hear the team and all that. I would love to, actually, but we need to keep moving. But I'd love to hear just a couple of descriptors that can capture the essence of what it's like to work on a high-performing team. And these folks are avoiding my eyes, so I'm going to come back here. Anyone at this table who's willing to share a word or phrase? Thank you. And this is David. Thank you, David. Right? So, hey, what words or phrases would you use to describe that experience?
Fun, inspiring, fulfilling.
Fun, inspiring, fulfilling. This was good. Did you practice? Did you know this was coming? That was really good. Fun, inspiring, fulfilling. Anyone at this table willing to share? Megan. Thank you, Megan. How about you?
Electric.
Electric. Nice. Very nice. Let's get one more back here. Anyone willing to share? Thank you. This is Joel. Thank you, Joel.
Energizing.
Energizing. So we have fun, electric, fulfilling, energizing. We've got one more. Yes. And this is? Say that.
Liberating.
Liberating. How about that? Okay, so we've got fun, exciting, fulfilling, liberating. So for those of you who have had the pleasure of serving on a team like that, being part of that team, does this work? I still use it. You know the reward, not only in how it feels, liberating, fulfilling, exciting, electric, but also in what you can do and what you can accomplish. And so we said, you know what, it's going to be first thing in the morning, it's going to be Thursday, people are going to be tired. Are we going to really get up on stage and show a bunch of models? Are we going to kind of talk at them for an hour and a half? Well, maybe not. Maybe we can make this fun. Because we don't want it to be like the Charlie Brown, you know, the womp womp coming at you. So we said, what if we actually showed a team in action? And really, what if we could bring this to life a little bit? So I would like you to take a look back here. We have the SPN Development Team. And I don't know about you, but it's not every day you get to talk in front of, I don't know how many hundreds of people in the room. So I would like for us to give them an encouraging round of applause to say thank you in advance. All right, so I am going to do a little bit of a model here for you. Now, the first thing I will say, kind of lesson number one, is that team development is a process, not an event. And that's probably mistake number one that teams make, is they think, okay, we're going to go away, and we're going to have this offsite, and we're going to say things, and we're going to talk, and we're going to learn things, and we're going to be this great team, and then we're going to come back, and things are going to be completely different. And that is what team building used to look like, or that's what people were trying to get for. But what we know is that does not really work. You can learn some things by doing that, and you can improve performance a little bit maybe by doing that, but really it's the process of team development that makes the difference. And it's not always exciting and fun. Sometimes it's really, really hard work. But what I'm going to do is show you the framework that we use to engage in team development. So we first start with the framework for success, and then we follow these steps. And if you do nothing else but use this one slide and really, really put it into play, then you will have a stronger team. You can have a stronger team. So no investment, doesn't cost you much other than your time, but this can make a difference with your team. And I'm happy to say that you don't have to furiously take notes, because my colleague Marina Easton and I, Marina, you want to wave your hand? We are summarizing all of this for you, and it will be in the SPN News, the newsletter. And so this is going to be captured for you for your reference, and that'll be coming out in about a month. So you start with the framework for success, and then you follow this model. So what framework of success am I referring to? So this is it. This defines what success looks like. And you'll see it's a very simple model. It's a model that we've been working on for a few years, and it's one that I constantly tweak. I learn something every time I work with a team. And so we're constantly updating this model. But this is the summary. There are 3 big buckets that you want to pay attention to when you're developing your team. The first one is your purpose, your team purpose. Why are we here? What are we here to do? What are we trying to achieve, big picture and long term? What do we stand for? What do we want to be famous for? So answering those questions will really help you define your team purpose. And if your team is small, if your organization is small as a team, then you can generalize that to your organizational purpose. Without this, however, you don't have your true north. And you've got to have that clearly defined and articulated to everyone on the team, because you're gonna hold that up to make decisions and to set priorities. And if that true north is not clear, then your priorities won't be clear and your decisions might be contrary to each other. So once you have that figured out, then you move to that second bucket. And let me actually back up. We're going to have some time for Q&A at the end. And if you have questions about what does that look like, what does that process look like, you can ask Daniel, because this team went through the process of asking those questions. They came up with a team charter. So anyway, if you have questions about that, be sure to ask at the end of this. Then we move to the mechanics. And this is an enormous bucket. So in this bucket, we say, all right, we know our purpose. So how do we structure our team? What kind of roles do we need? What kind of resources do we need? What kind of processes and procedures do we need? How are we going to ensure quality? How are we going to ensure we're communicating with each other and updating each other? So this is a very big, tactical, complicated, sometimes tedious bucket, that the more clear you can be about these things, then the more the machine is going to work like a fine-tuned machine. And again, if you have questions about this, I think about 3 years ago, we would have had, like 3 people up on stage for the SPN Development Team. And about a year ago, we would have had about this many people up on stage. And here we are with this many people up on stage. So there's been a lot of work done recently in this bucket for this team. And I'm sure Rebecca Brookhauser would love to answer some questions, because a lot of that work is falling to her. So the third bucket you see down at the bottom has to do with relationships. And when teams do work, they often work on the 2 top buckets, but the one at the bottom is the one that teams often just leave to kind of work itself out. It's the one that gets ignored. But the limit to the relationships of the team results in the ceiling with which the team will bump up against in terms of performance. So if your relationships are good, and you've got strong trust, you communicate well with each other, you manage conflict well with each other, then there's no limit to what you can do in terms of, hey, we need to revisit our purpose, we need to redefine who we are, we need to make this team operate more effectively. So if you've got those strong relationships, the sky's the limit with the other 2 categories. But if there's lack of trust, if you're not talking with each other, if you don't manage conflict well, then you're really limiting what you can do in the other 2 buckets. One of the slides that we had up there for the teams was the Miami Heat. Are there any basketball fans out there? Yeah? Okay, so I read this really interesting article weeks ago about the Miami Heat. In 2011, they drafted, I think it was the first time in history a basketball team has ever drafted like the first top 3 picks or something crazy. And so they said, this team will be unstoppable. They will be incredible. This has never happened. Just sit back and watch what happens. And what happened in 2011? They didn't do very well. Then they came back in 2012, and they were a completely different team. Not by person, but by performance. And And what we know is that familiarity and that knowing each other and having those relationships has a fundamental difference in how the team operates. So you need the skill, and you need the capability, and you need the ability to play the game, or to do what you do in your team, but you've got to have those relationships, and they can make all the difference between having a terrible season and making it to a championship. Okay, so now that we know what success looks like, then we can kick into the team development process. And I promise I'm going to stop talking at you very soon. All right, so we have our framework. The first thing we want to do in order to develop our team and raise the performance of our team is say, well, how are we doing right now? So what are we good at? And what are we not so good at? And how do we find that out? So there are a couple of ways. Number one, you can ask, hey team, how you doing? You doing well? What are you good at? What are you not so good at? Okay, this team actually did that. They gave feedback on the team itself. And that's very helpful, and if that's all you can do, that is better than doing nothing. But what's the risk of just asking the team what their strengths are and what their development areas are? Any ideas? Silo, okay, so they might be looking at say, hey, we're great. We don't know what they think about us, but we're really, really good. So what can really help the team is to think about who are our key stakeholders? Who do we count on for success, and who counts on us for success? What if we ask them how we're doing? Ooh, what if we don't like what they say? Should we ask them? Okay, let's do it. All right, so team development, by the way, takes a lot of risk and vulnerability. So the SPN Development Team sent a survey out in March to all of SPN and said, hello SPN, we want to be really good partners with you. Tell us what we're doing well in that regard. Tell us what we can do to eliminate silos in the organization or help eliminate silos in the organization. Because SPN was growing really, really quickly. And as organizations grow quickly, it's easy to grow in those silos. So I said, let's not do that. Let's make sure we're not growing in silos. And tell us what we're not doing so well. Really, we want to hear it. Please tell us. Please be direct with us. Tell us what we can do to be even better business partners. So they did that. But then they said, you know what? We've gotten our own feedback. We've gotten feedback from our stakeholders. But what if we did something else and we got a really objective measure on team performance and how we're doing and what our team profile looks like and what our tendencies and preferences are, and then take a look at what that actually means. So we used an instrument called the Berkman, and I am not a Berkman affiliate. I'm certified on the Berkman, but I'm not here to sell it. Okay, I just want to be really clear about that. I use a lot of other instruments in different settings, the Myers-Briggs, some of you may have taken that, the 16PF, the Hogan, I think some of you have done the DISC. So there are lots of tools out there, but we chose the Berkman. I will say that SPN has done a fantastic job of using this tool and then squeezing every drop of value out of it. They didn't just take it and say, well, that was fun, let's go to the next thing. They've really, really used it across the organization. So I'm going to give you a little primer on the Berkman so that you can understand what's about to happen up here on the stage. And we're going to have some fun with it. You guys almost ready? Okay. All right. A fundamental assumption of the Berkman is that people and teams demonstrate what are called usual behaviors. And these are the productive, adaptive, flexible, positive behaviors that people demonstrate on a regular basis. Now, let's see, who is someone that most of you in the room know? All right, let's pick on Tracy. Can I pick on Tracy? So if I were to go set up a little booth in the back, the Tracy feedback booth, and I said, okay, everybody come give me feedback on what you see when Tracy is at her absolute best. When she is hitting her stride, top of her game, what do you see? And you would be giving me lots and lots of behaviors, and I'd be writing them down. Those behaviors that you were giving me would fit into that circle called usual. These are our strengths. And Berkman is making a statement by calling them usual, because what they're saying is this is what we usually demonstrate when we are in the right environment. And that's a big if. We demonstrate these strengths if we are in the right environment, in the right setting. In other words, we're in the right fit for our capabilities, and we're in the right culture specific to what we need. All right, so those are our usual behaviors. This is what we look like at our best, and in a minute you're going to see what this team looks like at its best. But Berkman doesn't stop there. And they said, well, guess what? From time to time, we demonstrate what are called stress behaviors. And these are not great. These are the stupid things we do and the stupid things we say that we really wish we didn't. They're the things that undermine our productivity. They are the behaviors that undermine our credibility. And they are the behaviors that undermine our relationships. And it is another fundamental assumption that we all have them. There's nobody in the room who's immune to stress behaviors. And it's really interesting to watch teams arrive at that place. And you'll hear someone say, okay, I admit it. When I get under stress, I get really impatient, and I get really fussy, and I get very difficult to work with. Okay, I said it. But then the team's saying, okay, you knew that all along. That's not a secret. But now at least we can have a conversation about it, and the dynamics completely change. And what's really nice is every single person on the team has that thing, or those tendencies that they display when they're under stress. And when the teams can really recognize those stress behaviors, then you're taking your performance to a whole new level, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, so you're either top of your game up at usual, or you are not doing well down in stress. So what determines whether you're at the top of the page here or down at the bottom? I've worked with a couple of you out there. Do you remember? Thank you. Good job. Whether or not your needs are met. So think about it. Now I know we don't think about this kind of stuff every day. When our needs are met, we are at our best. When our needs are not met, especially over time, we move into stress and we are not productive. And those needs can be anything from physical. Oh my gosh, I am so exhausted. And I am so tired. And I'm freezing cold and haven't eaten in 17 hours. Okay, are you going to be at your best? No way. Or it could be something like, look, I don't feel appreciated. I don't feel like anyone recognizes what I do. Am I going to be my best? No. Okay? So when our needs are met, then we are good to go. And we're top of our game. When our needs are not met, especially over time, it's not good. So what we do with teams is we recognize in each other, hey folks, this is what we look like when we're at our best, and let's make sure we get there. How do we get there? Well, we make sure that we have our needs met, okay? And also when we slip, and we will slip, then let's be sure we recognize it early and have a plan for what we're going to do when we start to go there so we can get out quickly. All right, so now we're going to start to pull in the development team here. And what I'm going to do, we'll give it just a second. I'm going to ask them to help us out. And you remember all those behaviors that you gave me about Tracy? About how awesome she is or what she looks like when she's at her best? Well, we can bucket those behaviors into these 4 categories. And when you take the Berkman, you get about 15 pages of information. You can get 100 if you want, but typically to really get your results is about 15 pages of information. And you get a lot of specific results. But Berkman will also give you this one overall score on your usual. And it will place you in one of these 4 categories. And if your score is way out in the bottom right-hand corner, then you are a strong blue. Or if your score is way out in the top left, you're a strong red. Or if your score is right in the middle near the 4 corners, then you're going to kind of pull on all 4. But essentially what Berkman is saying is that when we are at our best, we get results in one of 4 ways. For those folks who are in red, we get results through action. Let's see who our red folks are. We get results through action. So we are decisive, we are results-oriented, we have a strong bias for action, we get stuff done. And if you can move maybe a little bit closer in so we can get you. There we go. All right, keep going, keep going. We want to see you on the screen. Yes, there we go. Perfect, thank you. Okay, so these are our reds. All right, so let's say thank you. Hello, Rebecca Payne and Rebecca Gates. Our reds, thank you very much. All right, now, you might score in the blue quadrant. And if you score in the blue quadrant, that that means you get results through big picture thinking. So let's find out who our blue folks are. Big picture thinking, they connect the dots. They are thorough in their thinking. They're very intentional. They recognize ambiguity and they wrestle within that ambiguity. All right, so these are our blues. So we've got the fabulous Michael Ross, Betsy Thrays, and Rebecca Feldman. Yes, thank you very much. Have you noticed a trend with the Rebecca thing? Okay, we only have 3 on the stage so far. All right, now, so for those of you who are really paying attention, did you notice that when we look across the red and the blue, they're kind of opposite, right? So we've got the big picture thinker, what if, how about, connect the dots, and then we've got get it done. Let's not think about it, let's actually do it. Okay, so the red and the blue are either going to really complement each other, or there could be a little bit of conflict there. But let's keep going. Now, if you get results, if your score is over in the yellow quadrant, then you are someone who gets results through planning, detail management, the numbers. Let's find out who our yellow folks are. Metrics, finances, think spreadsheet. All right? So here we have the fabulous Christina Mitten-Sanders and Alex Baker, our yellows. Excellent. Okay. They're not going to let anything fall through the cracks. Well, let's find out who our green folks are. Now we've got Jerry Krause and the fabulous Daniel Erzbomber. Now, yes, woo, good job. Okay, so the folks who score in the green, they get results through people. They connect, they engage, they inspire, they motivate. They're thinking about, what about the people? Let's make sure we're thinking about the people. And there's really smart people out there. We talked about the red and the blue being opposite. Guess what? The red and the green are opposite, right? Spreadsheets, detail, metrics, finances. But what about the people? Okay, so again, along that diagonal, we're either going to see really, really good complementary things happening, or we're going to see a little bit of conflict. So let's find out what this actually looks like. Let's hear from the development team about some of the insights that they came to as they were going through this process, and when they looked and they saw their group profile on that sheet of paper. And I'm going to put up some descriptors for you so you can kind of see. I don't know if you can read all this, but those are some descriptors. One other thing I want to say is, as you move towards the top of the grid, and so on the stage here, just a minute ago you saw the overhead camera, as you move to the top of the grid, what we're going to see from you is really direct communication. There's our grid. You see it? So wave reds. Can you wave? There we go. And we've got the greens. Yep. Jerry, can you move forward just a little bit? Because we can't see you. Thank you. So those in the red and the green, we're likely to see really direct communication. Concise, to the point, kind of out front, real comfortable, talking in a lot of different social situations. And those that we see down toward the bottom of the grid, in the yellow and the blue, right, the people in front, they're going to engage in more indirect communication. In fact, literally what you might hear some yellows say is, I'm going to let the numbers speak for themselves, right? So they're going to be more indirect communicators. And then over on this side, we're going to be more about task and structure. Over on this side, we're going to be about ideas and people. All right, so we got the setup. So let's hear from the development team about, okay, so what does this mean? What's the so what in all this? This is kind of fun and pretty. But actually, what does this mean? What are some of the insights that we can gain from this exercise? Okay, we're going to turn it over to Rebecca Feldman. Thank you, Rebecca. If you want to start us off.
Happy to. Well, I'm over here in the blue, so I tend to be careful. I think a lot. Sometimes I think too much. I overthink things. So in one example, I was thinking too much about something, saying to myself, I should have done this, I should have done that. And this is what I lovingly refer to as shoulding all over myself. So there I was thinking, saying to myself all of this, and really was in a state of indecision. Couldn't quite move forward, felt stuck. And over there in the red, I have a colleague, Rebecca Brookhauser, who's very action-oriented and very focused that way, a doer. And she had suggested to me, why don't you try doing this? And I did, and it worked great. And effectively, she had pulled me out of this big pile of should I was standing in to help me move forward. And so this is where the balance really helps, and it helps to complement each other.
Yeah, so great example of when there's someone over in red saying, okay, that's good thinking, but it's time to come over here and actually do something. And sometimes the blues will wave and say, okay, that's really good, we want to get going, but let's make sure we think it through. So again, when you've got that balance, then you get that kind of breakthrough result. But sometimes it can result in that tension. So it's a great example of when the red kind of pulled Rebecca out of that thinking and that kind of, what did she say, shooting all over herself in order to actually take action. Thank you, Rebecca. All right, let's see. We've got Christina. She's going to share something with us as well. Some insights that came to mind when we went through this.
Well, I think it can really be a positive if you're opposites with your boss, Daniel. We really complement each other in our role at SPN, where I think it can be an example this week with the development track. I get to do some things that I love, which is planning professional development for our development director members, and I'm really putting all those pieces together. And then I get to turn to my rock star, Daniel, and really put him up on the stage where he does well in motivating and inspiring folks. And I kind of still get to be behind the scenes, but really see the pieces that I have put together on paper come to life when I give Daniel the stage to do that. So it works well in what we do.
Excellent. And one thing that I heard Christina say when we were kind of talking about all this, about spreadsheets and what they do to Daniel, do you remember that? That wasn't you. That was someone else. Okay, we're going to pick on Daniel later. I'm sorry. It certainly applies here, but we'll wait. Stay tuned. All right, so here you see really, really complementary behaviors across the grid. And one thing that Bergman will say is it shaves about 2 years off the time it takes to understand the people that you work with in your team. And so you can see, we don't want to generalize. We don't want to say, okay, well, because Michael is in blue, we know everything there is to know about Michael. And we're going to make all these kinds of assumptions. No way. But it's a really, really good conversation starter. Really good conversation starter. And it tells us the questions to ask, and it helps us get insight in how to quickly understand how the team works. All right, so here we get a snapshot, a glimpse of what the development team looks like at its best. Would you like to see what the team looks like at its worst? Are you guys up for that? So this is when they get to, or open the kimono a little bit, and again, I really appreciate them being willing to do this. All right, so we can bucket stress behaviors in the same 4 categories. Okay, so if you look up on the screen here, so red at its best, right, was decisive, bias for action, get stuff done, direct and friendly. But there's an underbelly to that tendency. There's an underbelly to get stuff done and getting results through action. And it's results-driven, overdone. And under stress, those folks who score in red, they get really bossy, they get impatient, they can be so focused on results that they forget all about the people. They can get so focused on results and they get so busy that they are just running on that hamster wheel. They're not being productive at all, but they've got to be doing something. So you can think about, as I'm describing this, where you think you fall, because guess what? If we were to do this grid out in the middle of the floor, every one of you would fall somewhere, right? Because we all have our stress behaviors. All right, so that's red, bossy, impatient, etc. Folks who fall in the green under stress, remember that was about the people? So it's all of a sudden the underbelly. I am not trusting others. I'm skeptical of others. I'm getting very, very competitive. I'm getting very, very aggressive. I'm getting overly ambitious. I'm seeking the spotlight. I'm trying to get a lot of attention here. Okay, so those are very stereotypical descriptors, and not one person is going to exhibit all of them, but those are the things that we're at risk for exhibiting if our stress scores in the green. And what about the yellow? You remember rules, process, metrics, plans? If you score a yellow in stress, then guess what? You get really rigid. You get very rule compliant, or rule obsessed. You fight with rules. You dig your heels in when there's change. You might even undermine the change because you don't like it. All right, that's yellow. And then blue. When people go blue on us under stress, they tend to get very melodramatic. They get very cynical because the sky is falling and nobody understands. And I'm going to go to my cave and I'm not coming out until it's over. Okay, that's what we see in blue. Yes, you're laughing because, right? Let's find out why we're laughing up here on the stage. Whoops, I went too far. I'm going to go back. Okay, let's see. Now, just because you are where your usual score does not predict where you are in stress. So let's find out where this team is under stress. All right, there we are. Under stress? Where are our reds? Where are our bossy people under stress? Okay, can I make it, do you want to say what happened when we were rehearsing, please, Rebecca?
Well, you've already heard that I'm very action-oriented, and that is not an exaggeration. It's completely true. And because I'm so active and like to get things done, I also like to go to sleep at 9 o'clock at night because I exhaust myself. And we had a meeting to discuss this very production that lasted, some people would say 11:30, but I called that close to midnight. And it was 2 hours, and I wanted to be bossy and tell people to move a little bit faster. And I had to check myself, especially because I'm new to the SPN team, and I knew that if I showed my true behavior, my teammates might want to boot me out. So it's a good example of how this works.
Yeah, so it's a really great example because we were like in the moment, we were so tired, we were figuring out how we're going to do this, and Rebecca said, okay, I just want to point out the fact that I'm moving into stress behavior right now because we need to finish this thing up, but I'm going to be quiet and not say anything. And so it was perfect. She caught herself, and all of a sudden she wanted to go into that stress mode, and that is what's really powerful about this. All right, so we've got some folks over in yellow. You'll see we don't have anyone in green for this one. We don't have anyone in green. But let's hear a few more examples about, you know what? Okay, so we did have some really good examples come up regarding the stress behaviors when we were talking about getting ready for annual conference, because believe it or not, just a few stressful things happen along the way. And our last planning call was about 10 days before this conference, so we had lots of good examples. But then we thought about, do we really want to like talk about what we look like under stress up on the stage? The group quickly said no, but why don't we talk about what Daniel looks like when he's under stress? So we said, we voluntold Daniel and said, we're just going to talk about Daniel under stress mode. So we have just a few examples to share. Let's see. Betsy, you want to go ahead and start us off on pick on Daniel Day here?
Sure. It will be my pleasure. No, Daniel is awesome in every way, but every once in a while, here comes a flurry of emails in this frantic sort of mode, asking about every possible project we've undertaken in the last, 5 years. Tell me how donor visits are coming along. What about our priority list? How's boost management going? How's this? How's that? What about the 2020 annual meeting? Did you order the paper clips yet? And when that happens, because of our Berkman, I know not to take that personally. My natural tendency is to think, okay, he thinks I'm an idiot and an incompetent, but it's not about me. What that is his stress behavior, and what I'm learning from him when that happens is that he's starting to feel a little panic. He's feeling the weight of his responsibility to do his job in order that we can do things like this. And so he's getting in a little bit of a panic mode. And so I know that what I need to do is to quickly report to him everything I can and reassure him that things are actually happening, and we all do this, that things are actually happening and that we're all on board with him. We don't want him to feel like he's the only one carrying the responsibility of development for SPN. And so it's my job then to reassure him and let him know, and all of us let him know, that we are with him, we're moving with him, we're doing our part, and we're reporting our results to him. And other than, the Berkman is great because it helps me understand his stress behavior, but it's also helped Daniel understand his own stress behaviors, because he will he knows when he's going into that mode because he's studied this and he knows. And so he's gotten to the point where he will actually say, all right, he'll call up and he'll say, all right, I'm starting to, I'm getting in that panic mode a little bit, but it's, it's not you and it's not full panic yet, but I'm getting there. So can we talk about this? And it's like, yeah, and it's very good because he doesn't freak out and I don't freak out and we get it done. So that's how it's worked for us. And he's a great boss, I'd like to add.
Very nice. Right, great things to say at review time. So you can hear a couple things, right? That the folks who in blue under stress, they can get that panic, that the sky is falling, and they can also get that nobody understands. And so Betsy now knows, okay, I need to communicate to him all the information I can, because also blue's like, can get that analysis paralysis. Let me give him all the information I can, but let me also help him realize he is not out there on an island. We are in this together, we're gonna do this together, and that all of a sudden completely changes the interaction. Thank you, Betsy. I think we have another example. Daniel, are you okay to keep going on Pick on Daniel Day?
Plug it on.
Okay.
He has to be. That's the only reason we all agreed to this. Make fun of Daniel. So I was fortunate enough before I joined SPN last year to have worked with Daniel for a couple years as a director of development. And so I knew he was lots of fun and he was definitely a people person and he was great at his job. And so as our team has grown, everyone who I've interviewed on this stage has heard that when the position was offered, I felt like a freshman who SPN was the senior quarterback who just asked me to the prom. And I was so excited and I didn't negotiate and I didn't say, well, let me think about it, I'll get back to you. I just said, absolutely, I'd be honored. And in large part, that had to do with the fact that because I knew him and worked with him for 2 years, I knew we were exactly alike and that we had the same viewpoint and perspective as to how to move forward. As you've seen today, we're pretty much polar opposite. But when we first started working together, again, I didn't know that. So before I came along, it had really been Betsy and Daniel for about 6 months, and then Michael and Christina. And so I said, oh, because they haven't had the time, they don't have checklists, and they don't have processes. So I'll go ahead and do that. He'll love that. And so I'd send him a checklist. He's like, oh, thanks. And then I'd send another one. He's like, oh, that's cute. Bless your heart. Thanks for sending that over. And as he continued to bless my heart, I somehow realized that he did not see the same value in these tools and checklists as I did. But I knew that when I was prioritizing and strategizing with our donors and was presenting him my color-coordinated spreadsheets in Excel, that he was very impressed. I knew that because, again, we were exactly alike. And so when he finally said, could you just send me the donor names? I trust your decision, but your spreadsheets make my brain hurt. Again, I was confused and baffled and a little frustrated. And so I took the Berkman, and it did. It showed I was red, it showed I was action-oriented, and that I wanted to move forward, and it showed that he was the big picture thinker. And what it did was it helped me understand and not stress quite as much about the fact that we looked at things differently, and that was okay because we can actually balance each other and complement each other very well because we do have very different perspectives.
Thank you. So you heard the yellow talk. So yesterday when Coach Glassman was talking about we need a precise and accurate measure that we can measure over time. For those of you out there who are like, yes, that's what you need, you're probably yellow. Okay, just so you know. So Rebecca was going for the precise and accurate measurement and tracking of information, which for folks who are over on this side of the grid can kind of make your head hurt. So I think we have time for one more example. Do we want to do one more example about the,
So in stress paper, you're a very good example. I mean, we've all done events before, so everyone here knows it can be a skosh on the stressful side. So Daniel says, you're going to do VIP seating. Okay, I can do that. So I get the color coordination down for sponsors and donors and all the people that are on this list. And it's 150 folks, and I line it all out by table. And I said, but I need you to review it. So we're on the phone, and first table, you know, that's pretty easy. Who's speaking at that event? And Tracy's going to be there, and Mr. Hellstrom's going to be there. And he said, yep, table 1 looks good. Well, why is Joe Smith sitting next to Jane? I'm like, what? Where are you? He said, well, table 14. Well, this is why. Well, why is Sally next to Susie? Where are you? I'm at table 7. I'm like, no. We were at 1. Now we go to 2. Next we're going to go to 3. And he's like, yeah, I don't work like that. And my chest started to get tight. And I'm like, I don't even know what to do. And I just realized he's looking at things from the big picture. And I said, okay, I'm gonna let you have that. We'll do it your way, but just know we're not done till we do it my way. So, again, we got everyone checked off from a big picture perspective. Everyone was taken care of, and from a detail action-oriented perspective, everyone was at the right table. So, but Berkman helped us, yeah, we hope. If you're not, it's Daniel's fault. But it really helped us complement one another and be better teammates, understanding that, you know, it's okay that he looks at it differently than I do.
Great combination too. So you want to be looking at the room from the big picture, but you really also want to be looking at the room from the detail perspective. And so if the team is looking at things, if they're looking at the forest and they're looking at the trees, you're going to have a much better forest altogether. So our stress behaviors, as I said early on, are our ineffective attempts to get our needs met. So our stress behaviors give us insight into what we need from our environment. And so what's really nice about the Berkman is that it doesn't just tell us what we look like at our best, and it doesn't just tell us what we look like at our worst, but it also tells us what do we need to be at our best. And that is really hard to figure out on your own. Often individuals aren't even really aware of what those needs are. And there's some really interesting stuff that happens when people look at their results. And some people say, oh, I definitely need that, I need that. I don't need that. Oh, yes, you do. And the team will give feedback to the person saying, no, you really do kind of need that. And so a whole nother level of insight can happen when we look at the next grid here, which is what we need in order to be at our best. So you get, with the Berkman, you get an overall kind of need score. And if you score the red, then this means that you have a need for speed. You have a need for action. And if you don't get that action, if you don't get those results and things are not moving along quickly, then as we heard from Rebecca Painter, you can get really impatient. Okay? So need for speed there over in the red. Over in the yellow, there's a need for structure, a need for a plan, a need for the process, a need for the detail. How is this going to work, and what's going to happen, and what are the conditions of satisfaction we're trying to meet here? If all those things are clear, I'm good to go. But if I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, or if I feel like I'm kind of reinventing the wheel, but I can't find the wheel that was invented before, it's going to drive me crazy. And then I'm going to get down into lockdown mode. For our folks over here in blue, they've got that need to have time alone. They've got that need to be able to think. And they've got that need to be able to be understood. And so when you're talking to someone who has a strong blue need, you need to take time and show that you really understand what they're saying and that you communicate that you understand their point of view. Versus when you're talking to a red, you need to make sure you get to your point quickly, because they're not going to have a lot of time and a lot of patience to hear your message. And then the folks in green, they've got a need for connection, a need for variety, a need, somewhat of a need for the spotlight, and to see that they're making progress towards success. So you can see
how the
dynamics can really come to life here.
I just stopped recording,
and
so it
I
only
could
had
not help
10%.
but think about the storytelling and how to use storytelling, because there's been a lot said here over the past couple of days about the power of storytelling and the importance of storytelling. And so you can think about that in terms of your audience. Okay, if I'm telling my story to a red audience, I better communicate so what. and I better communicate the call to action. Because if I get up here and I say a really nice story, but there's nothing at the end, the punchline isn't some kind of action-oriented punchline, you're going to lose the reds. If I'm going to tell the story to the blue folks, then I need to make sure that I get that emotional hook and grab them, because they're really going to connect with that emotional story. And they're going to connect, they're going to appreciate the sub-themes and the plots and the overarching message, that they're really going to appreciate that emotional component. And if you're going to tell a story to the yellows, then you better have what? A graph. That's right. You better have a graph, you better have some data, and your story needs to be accurate. You can't exaggerate, because the second you exaggerate with those yellows, you lost your credibility. So you've got to be accurate with those yellows, and you've got to show that graph. Excellent, Juliana. That's really good. Yes, Daniel.
I think I get a little revenge, right, on this?
Yeah.
No, I won't take revenge, but I will point out my very favorite, the very favorite phrase in the entire Berkman lexicon. And so I'll turn it over to Rebecca Feldman to tell us a little bit about what it means to be maliciously compliant.
Well, Daniel, if that's the order of business, whatever you say.
Thank you so much. Yes, Rebecca, you can't tell by the graph, but Rebecca is like as yellow, deep yellow as you can get, and the words maliciously compliant came up a lot as we were talking. So she's going to follow the rules to regardless and under stress, and we'll dig those heels in and be maliciously compliant. You can see that there are a lot of different applications to this. The storytelling is one, but the way, probably to me, one of the most important things about going through this whole exercise with this team is not where they fell on the chart and not what their scores were and where the dots were, but if you can hear them have these conversations to say, okay, Rebecca, I get the sense that you're getting a little maliciously compliant right now, then all of a sudden it's a different conversation, and she knows exactly what that person is saying to her, and it helps you step back and say, oh, okay, I am operating in stress mode. I am operating not at my best. What do I need to do to get back on top? And so it helps us recognize those behaviors, and then the team, actually what the team did, was they said, okay, based on what we need to be at our best, what kind of requests do we have of each other? And it's really interesting, because when we did this, I didn't group it by color, but in preparation for this meeting I went back and I grouped the requests by color, and it was really fascinating to hear how closely the requests correspond with what you see up there on the grid. So for example, we heard from some of the blues, and the blues said things like, okay, group, here's my request of you. When it is a new decision, give me the time to think about it, then let's talk. So you hear, I need time to think, I need time to work through that decision. Don't ask me to make a decision on the spot. Or when I do a good job, and you come to me with a message that what I did was inadequate because the situation changed, you robbed me of a victory. So you hear that I need to be understood, I need to be appreciated coming from the blue. You can't get more direct from that. This is a guidebook. With this, they created, if you're going to work with a development team, this is what you need to know. From our yellows, listen to how the tone changes. Give me the parameters, and I will figure out how to address it. Whatever you're doing, give me the updates. Let me see the progress. If we're moving towards a goal, communicate that you have things under control. So we heard things like that from the yellows. Allow me the freedom to put my own ducks in a row. We don't have anyone from green, but here we have from red. Clear communication is it from me. So you remember, on the need side, the higher up on the grid, the more red and green you get, the more you need direct communication. Give it to me straight. Tell me what you need, tell me in an unemotional way. Okay, the end of this was no schmingus dingus. And so last night I looked up schmingus dingus thinking, am I going to offend some people in the room by saying those words? So I'm going to ask Jerry, because that was his, I got permission to share this. Jerry, can you please explain to us what no schmingus dingus means?
Sure. It means just don't beat around the bush. Lay it out there. Tell me exactly what you need done, and we will make it happen. Just make a plan and let's run it. So that's my take on that. My wife has needlessly enjoyed using the Berkman on me as well. So it's helped our relationship quite a bit.
That's so good to hear. Yes. And by the way, for those of you who are curious about what Świąteczny actually means, it's in Poland, it's the Monday after Easter where the boys run around and dump water on the girls. So I think it's just saying, don't stuff on me, let's just get to the point. Okay, all right, so any other comments for the group? Any other comments? So I hope you got a little bit of a flavor of what this is like, and I would like to ask that we give the development team a huge round of applause for doing this with us. It was so much fun. We did that from about April through now. We got to do that. That work was great fun. But we didn't stop with that. So we said, okay, well, let's take what we learned through the Berkman and let's figure out what do we do with it. So we took the information from the Berkman, and then we also took information. You remember when I said we talked to our key stakeholders and we asked them, hey, what do we do that's really good? Okay, so we actually took, and I don't know if you can see this, but on the board are the actual comments that came from SPN that answer the question, what are we doing well? And we met, we took all these and we put them up on the walls, we sorted them into themes, and we said, here are the themes that came out on the positive side. You're responsive, you keep people updated, you have really good donor relationships, fierce about building strong integrity-based relationships with the donors, for example. You have a positive attitude. You're open communicators. You celebrate successes. You focus on SPN and not on the individual. So these were the things that said, you're doing really well, keep it up. All right, so these were our strengths. And remember, so we asked for the development stuff too? Well, here they are over here. And sometimes it's not so much fun to hear, but oh my gosh, it's a treasure trove of how to take your team from good to great, right? You're doing well, but how can you get it even better? So here were some of the things that we heard, or actually all the things. Keep others informed and updated. You're doing well, but we want more of it. Let's see, more partnering. We want some more partnering from you. Planning, seek to understand. And we had one person within development say, hey, you could really even ramp up the professional communications even more within the team, be more efficient with our time. So we said, all right, we're not going to work on everything. We've got the stuff from the Berkman, we've got the feedback. So what we're going to do is we're going to prioritize. And kind of big risk number 2 for teams is that they don't do that. They say, we're going to work on all of this because we can, and we can make ourselves better by addressing every theme. It doesn't work that way. You want to pick 1 or 2 things, and you want to do them really, really well. And so we developed an action plan, which is our next step in the chain here. And just, if you're planning on going through this process, and again, this will be in the newsletter, but it's essential that your action plan is very specific and that it has measurable goals and that it's realistic, you have time frames, you have who's accountable, etc. How many of you have heard of SMART goals? Have you heard of that term? SMART goals, some of you? Okay, so you want to make sure that you've got the specific, measurable, relevant, action-oriented, time-bound stuff. Because if you have this really general plan, action plan that says, okay, we're going to keep other people informed. Agreed? Agreed. Okay, ready? Go. And then everybody walks out of there, there's no plan, there's no accountability, there's no way to know if you're doing it any better, there's no metric for success. So the more that you can get very, very specific into the behavior level in your action plan, the more successful you're going to be as you take on the next step, which is to implement the action plan. So implementation kind of speaks for itself, but it's getting out there and it's doing what you said you're going to do. And it's not easy because there's so much going on when you get back to work. And that is why I pulled out this next step in the team development process as its very own item, and that is follow through. And I would say when it comes to team development, this is the #1 pitfall. This is the #1 landmine. This is the hardest place, and this is where teams usually fail in the team development process, period. And I have learned over the years that when I work with teams, what I say in that very first call is, okay, we can do this, but we've got to have a plan to follow through. And when we do this offsite and we do this meeting and we have these action steps and we have a plan, we need to communicate at that meeting when your first check-in is going to be. So whether it is a week later or a month later, maybe a quarter later when we come back and we said, okay team, this is what we agreed to do. Let's see, Michael had the Development 101. They did an incredible job of following through on this. So they went out to SPN, they took anywhere from, 5 to 15 minutes with every staff meeting to cover another topic. Say, here's what we do, we're gonna help you educate on the roles, and it was in response exactly to this. And they did it, and it was so amazing to get on the phone and hear Daniel say, yeah, we did, and here are the topics we covered. All right, so but without that accountability, this whole process kind of falls apart. So again, if you are going to do this with your team, you've got to figure out how you're going to hold each other accountable. This works for individual development as well. That follow through and that accountability is absolutely essential. Okay, so you've got your insight through your assessments. You prioritized what you're going to work on. You came up with this fabulous action plan. You implemented the plan and you followed through. Celebration, right? Absolutely. But then we say, okay, how do we know if we were truly successful? We know we checked it off the list, but have we truly made a difference? And so what you do is you go ask. And you remember those stakeholders that we talked to way back in March? Or way back at the beginning of this process? We go back to them. And we say, thank you for that feedback that you gave us in March. As you know, we took it, we responded to it, we acted on it, here are the things we did. What kind of difference did it make? And so what we actually did in October is we sent another very quick survey out to the SPN group, and we said those very things. And we said on a scale of 1 to 5, there are 3 things that the SPN team has been working on. The first thing that we're working on is keeping people more informed. And here are the things that we tried to do that. Were we successful? Score us. A 1 means it's worse or the same, no progress. A 3 is, yeah, we made a little bit of progress, kind of, sort of. 4 is, you definitely made some progress. And a 5 is, wow, you made notable, significant progress. The second one they got rated on was informing others. And the third thing they got rated on was better planning. Think calendars and spreadsheets, right? So, hot off the press, we asked these questions in October, and I'm thrilled to say that for their first development area, keeping others informed, on a scale of 1 to 5, the team scored a 4.5 on progress made. Way to go, team! Woohoo! All right, nice work on progress. On the second one, keeping others informed, they scored a 4.1, so they definitely made progress there. And on the planning, they made progress. They scored above a 3. It was a 3.6. So not as much progress as they had made on the other areas. And ironically, isn't that like what the group is? Some people in the group, that's not as much of their tendency. It's not where they like to play as much. So there's opportunity there. What I will also say is the numbers were helpful and validated the fact that we truly indeed made progress. But every person who sent back a number sent back a comment. And they said things like, yes, I totally see that they're doing this and I appreciate it, keep it up. Or yeah, they're doing it, but you know what, it would be really great if da-da-da-da-da. Or you know what, I didn't really see that much progress in the XYZ. I need to see more. So those comments, that feedback is a treasure chest for this team. Because guess what? It gives them even further insight to start the model all over again. And then you think, oh my gosh, like this is a lot of work. I mean, I've got to do this again? And it's kind of like you do, if you want to keep getting better. So you might say, we're where we need to be, we're good enough, let's go. Or you can say, actually, we can take it up a notch. And every time you take a lap around this circle, you're going to take your team performance just a little bit higher and a little bit higher. But make no mistake, it is work. And it requires an investment of your time. And if you kind of, take it all the way, it requires other resources too. But what I will say is that you can do it with just that sheet of paper, right up there on the screen, to make a difference. And if you have any questions about the process itself, feel free to ask me questions. Well, actually, we've got a good bit of time for Q&A. You can ask me questions now, or you can find me. You can also find Marina through lunch. If you have questions about what it was like for the team, and again, going back to that very original model about what success looks like, then feel free to ask Daniel or Rebecca or anyone on the team. So what I'd like to do now is open it up for questions. What kind of questions do you have, either about the team development process, questions for the team about what that was like to go through the process, or questions about any of the models up here, or questions about the workman. Okay, we got one back here. Yep.
Sure. For a small organization that doesn't want to invest in a commercial task like workman,
yep.
I know that Myers-Briggs has stuff online. Do you have any thoughts on where you go for to give your team a self-evaluation where you can kind of do this informally rather than use a facilitator and an outside consultant?
Yeah. So here's the catch with that. Tools misused do more harm than good. And so most of the tools out there do require some kind of certification or validation or certification process for people to use them so they know how to use them, so they don't misuse them. I don't know, maybe there is some kind of version of the Myers-Briggs or some kind of version like the Myers-Briggs that you can do online. So I would almost say, actually what you could do with the Myers-Briggs, here's what I would suggest. Part of the process with the Myers-Briggs is you take it and then you go through, if you do it right, you go through work kind of validating the results. And so you could just take the descriptors, just like we did here. Let me see if I can do this and go backwards. You can sit down with your team and you could look at that Myers-Briggs profile. Extroversion versus introversion, sensing versus intuition, thinking versus feeling, etc. And you can say, here's where I think I fall in that, and then you can get the team members to say, yeah, you totally fall there. And then you can kind of come up with your own team assessment using that approach, and it wouldn't cost you a penny. So that's one thing that you could do. Now your results might not be completely accurate because sometimes we don't realize things about ourselves, but that's one thing that you can do. But some of those instruments, I would just be careful because at the end of the day, when it comes to using an instrument, you get what you pay for. And if you go the very less expensive route, there's a little bit more risk involved. But sometimes it makes sense just given your budget. And having that conversation with your team is incredibly valuable. So even if you're off just a little bit, if you do that own kind of self-assessment, it's okay because the conversation that would come from that would be super, super valuable. Yep, other questions? Yes. Tracy.
I was wondering if the development team could go back up and get in their stress behavior areas. My question has to do with that.
Oh, good.
Okay, Alison, my question is, what do you do when the majority of your team, or more than half of your team, when they get stressed, they go to indirect communication, meaning they withdraw? What should a team leader do when that happens?
Thank you. I thank you for that. Okay, if you look at the grid and you see the line, am I on stress? I'm not on stress mode. Let me go to stress mode here. Okay, nope, I'm going to go backwards. So if you look at the line on the grid and you divide it in half, top half, bottom half. So that line of divide is essentially telling us top half the grid under stress, fight. Under the line, flight. So you know that flight or fight reaction that we have that's kind of like part of our core brain? If you are at the bottom of the grid, then your reaction is much more quickly going to be flight. Let me retreat, let me get away, let me go into my cave or pull the covers over my head until this is over, whereas the folks in the red and green are the ones who are going to come out screaming and fighting and hitting, okay? So when you have a team where the reaction is to retreat, number one, it is really, really important for the leader to know that because it's going to be anti-instinctual for the leader to say, I'm stressed, there's trouble, there's a problem, I need to step out and talk about it. Because what the leader is going to do, if they're strong blue, is going to say, I need to step back. This is what I need to, I'm going to kind of go back here. So the leader, number one, needs to recognize that that is something that they're going to have to take charge of and get really, really uncomfortable with and do. The other thing is good for the team to understand that, okay, call them out on it, to say, hello, I haven't seen you in a while. Is everything okay? Or I know this is really tough, but I need you to step up, or we need to be talking about this. There are also some things you can do to just put in a process that says, all right, when we are in crisis mode or we are in trouble mode, that means that every morning at 8 o'clock we are doing a phone call and we are going to talk to each other. And so we're going to force ourselves to get out there and engage with each other because our tendency is to not talk. And so those are some of the things that you can do, but probably the most important thing is for the team to talk about, okay, what do we want to do when we go there? Because it's not good for us to figure this out when we're under stress. It's really good for us to figure out the plan before we go into stress. So all we have to do is say, okay, it's time for play stress. You know, our stress play in our little playbook. It's time for that. We've already figured it out. We already know what we're going to do. We're going to put it on the table. We need to execute that plan right now because we're in stress mode. Great, thank you. Yes.
Does Berkman explain why those who are in one quadrant for normal, usual behaviors will move to another quadrant for stress? Is there a correlation, or because there's some that are consistent, that are in the green quadrant right now? Does Berkman explain why that is?
Okay, so here's where it gets really tricky. The answer to the question is this. What we need from our environment does not have anything to do with how we behave in our environment when we're at our best. So maybe the best example I can give is this. As people, we tend to be relatively direct communicators. We tend to be, on average, the average Joe is going to be relatively direct, kind of to the point, not beat around the bush too much. As people, what we want from others is we want that message of, hey, I appreciate you, I value you. So what we put out in terms of our communication is not what we want back. So where we fall in stress has to do with what we want from our environment. It has nothing to do with how we operate when we are at our best. And so you can't predict one from the other. But the tricky part is, when I say, okay, well, how do I communicate with, I don't know what your name is, Dan? How do I communicate with Dan? Well, Dan's direct. He's matter of fact. He's to the point. When he has tough feedback to give me, he just comes out and says it. So you know what I'm going to do? When I talk to Dan, I'm going to be matter of fact. I'm going to be direct. And when I have tough feedback, I'm going to be very direct. Well, guess what? That's not how Dan wants the message delivered. And because as people, that's what we tend to do. So that might put him into stress because I'm being too direct with him. So again, what we put out into the environment, how we operate under usual, is not what we want back from the environment. And that's what's really great about this, is it helps us reveal that because it's hidden, it's completely hidden. But then it comes out in those stress behaviors. So what we need from our environment will predict our stress behaviors. But how we operate when we're at our best will not. So I hope that answered your question.
If I can add to that too, that for us as a team, that was one of the most helpful. This is one snapshot of the activity we've done using this particular tool over the course of the past couple of years. There's a number of sort of individual scores you go through, and one of it's really revealing to see what Alison just talked about, because you really are then forced to stop and think about how you communicate with someone, how you set up a program, how you structure things, because you're not just going on what you think is intuition about this is how they act, so that must be what they want. And so it really, Alison talked about sort of shortening the learning curve by about 2 years in building up the team, and it's so true because you don't have to, part of it is, you know, Rebecca's unlikely to tell me, yeah, this isn't, because she may not know exactly that that's what her need was, right? To say, yeah, really what I want is this, she's probably going to, okay, I'll do it, you know? And so for me to be able to look back at her scores and say, that's what I was supposed to, you know, so from an interpersonal perspective on the team, it's a tremendously valuable piece, because it's not intuitive that your needs don't necessarily match, you know, sort of your usual behavior.
If I could just add to that, it definitely is an investment from the organization, but it's one that you, as an employee, you appreciate, because it definitely helps not only expedite getting to learn and know who someone is, but as this team has grown so quickly, all of a sudden I go from just reporting to Daniel to having 5 brand new people that are reporting to me in all different locations, because we have a large virtual office. So it's such a worthy investment, because I was able to quickly say that Feldman and Gates, they like colored spreadsheets. We can work together from that perspective, and so it really gives you insight into what they do need, and when you get things back from them, again, as Rebecca was saying earlier, like, it's it's helpful for me to give her feedback because I know I have a better understanding at least, even though she's just been with us since February, have a much stronger understanding of who she is, what she needs, and how she responds to things.
Good. And again, I'll emphasize that you don't want to look at the spreadsheet and look at the results and say, okay, I understand exactly, but then you talk about it. And then all of a sudden you have these really, really rich conversations that again, would take 2 years to have or to learn those things. Other questions? Yes, Lynn.
Well, I'll say, first of all, I'm a convert, but I wasn't. So let me pose the question that I had initially, which was similar to Daniel, but it's like, oh great, we got all this kumbaya stuff going on, oh this is nice. So what? What comes out of this at the other end? Why is this worth this?
So I think a couple of the things. Number one was when we put all this together and we said, okay, here's what we look like as a team. Here's what we need from each other. And here's what all of SPN is saying we do well, but that we need to do better. Then we came up with the kind of, okay, well, what are we going to do about it? What is the so what? So one of the so whats was, let's go out and let's act on these requests for improvement. Another thing that the team did that was really cool was they created, essentially, based on what they need from each other and based on the insights that they got from this group, they created their kind of ways of working. About this is how we're going to work together. This is basically kind of our playbook on a page. And I'm trying to nonchalantly flip through that. And it was kind of based on the good. And so we said, all right, when we get together, we need to keep the big picture in mind. Because sometimes we don't always. Some of us think about the big picture, some of us don't. So let's, every time we get together, let's remind ourselves of the big picture and have a good beginning to our meetings. And so they mapped that out as saying, for our really big meetings, we're going to start off with some kind of reminder of the SPN vision and mission, or pieces of it. It's kind of a long statement. So we highlighted the pieces of that mission or vision that I'm like not finding this anywhere. Here it is. Okay. So we started with good beginnings. So let's start our meetings really well, and let's remind ourselves of the SPN vision when we get together. Let's have good endings to our meetings. So we talked about the structure and the planning and how we need to follow through on that. And so we end by saying, okay, what was the decision? Who is accountable? When is it due? All of those things that you do when you are running effective meetings. Good beginnings, good endings. Then we talked about when it isn't good. Okay, so when it isn't good, what are we going to do? So we're going to do things like, number one, we're not going to let things fester. To Tracy's question, there's folks who go down in the blue under stress. Sometimes they let things fester. So we talked about the impact of that. And we made a commitment. We are not going to do that. We're going to own up to our mistakes, but we're not going to dwell on them. And we're not going to shit all over ourselves, right? And there are a couple more. Taking ownership. Okay, so begin good, end good. When it's not good, here's what we do. We're going to celebrate the good. One of the pieces of feedback we got as a team was that we celebrate our successes and it's appreciated. It helps us stay motivated, so let's not lose that. And then what are we going to do to keep it good? And then we incorporated a lot of the requests that we had from each other. Think about what SPN needs first. So make sure that we're not thinking about development only. Let's make sure we're not thinking about our own individual success, but what does SPN need from us? Think through who might need information from us. So we have kind of a list of things to think about as we're making decisions and taking action. And then we also had one specifically about the annual meeting because it's so important, how we're going to act together and work together at the annual meeting. So that was probably one of our biggest so whats. What we decided in one of our last team calls was taking this list and actually making it a checklist. And so after every meeting we say, did we do? Where we did well, awesome. Where we didn't, why not? Where did we fall short on commitments that we made to each other? So again, I think, Lynn, the answer is that follow through. And you can go have the kumbaya on, you can do this and it is really fun, but unless you have follow through on that and a plan and that accountability, then you kind of do miss out on the so what. Okay, so I don't know if you heard what Lynn just said. You want to say it again there with the microphone?
Well, so that was kind of a devil's advocate question because, like I say, 2 years ago, that was my attitude. Now I will just say all this from my standpoint and with our team, we increased productivity. We are more efficient We get more things done with fewer resources. So I really wasn't trying to put you all on the spot as much as a lot of us in this room looking at this might say, well, great, but we don't have time for all this touchy-feely stuff. But the bottom line is, we do better. We're more efficient, and we serve our customers better. So I thank you, development team, from my standpoint. It's been marvelous working with you as you've gone through this process. So, just an advertisement.
All right, we've got just a couple minutes. Is there a question out there? Oh, yes, back here. Okay.
Yes, I think mine is also sort of a so what question. If this is a development team, you're talking about a means to an end, which I assume is raising money. Have you raised more money? Is it too soon to ask? Will you report back to us next year and tell us whether this all led to actually an increase in the amount of dough you break in?
Yeah, I'll take that one. Great question. We started this, when did we really start the intensive work with our team? It was really April, which was at a point, we sort of referenced this earlier, we had written a 5-year plan to sort of build out as the need or the demand for the services had increased. How would we meet that demand? Well, we have to find more resources to build up our internal infrastructure so we can meet demand. And so that grew so quickly, we actually executed the 5-year plan in 18 months in terms of building up the team, which is why you see so many people up here. And so the short answer to your question is already yes. We're seeing, because we can work much more smoothly as a team, we have systems worked out, we understand how each other work, the partnerships that have developed on different projects, as an SPN team as a whole, as we have used this exercise to come up with really cross-team sort of project committees and that sort of thing. The short answer from our perspective is yes, we are raising more money. This is only can't do math, that's a good thing. 6 or 8 months into this process, and we're already seeing the results from it. Happy to report back in a year and see how we're still doing it. But from our perspective, I think everyone would agree. I mean, this has really helped us. We don't spend as much time on conflict. We're able to get out in front of conflict. And so any of you who have been on a team that doesn't perform very well or has struggles, what you know is what you end up doing is festering in conflict, and you spend a lot of time managing interpersonal problems, and oh goodness, so-and-so's mad at so-and-so, and you get on the team calls and they're not very productive. And the reality is we don't spend a lot of reactive time to that. We spend some proactive time. Alison referenced the ways of working. And so we're able to dedicate more time and energy on actually doing our jobs. And so for me, that's the biggest takeaway. And it does allow me, we just know if we have more time and we use our resources more efficiently, we're going to be more successful at our goals. And given the talent that we have on the stage, it would be a shame to squander that, spending a lot of time on reactive conflict management.
The other thing I'll mention is it's very convenient to be working with a development team because you have a metric, which is funds raised. There are a lot of teams where you don't have that tangible metric. But what we do know, whether it's development or other teams, there are other very, very important outcomes that come from this process. Again, whether you follow the exact map or something like it, whether you use the Berkman or you don't, you can tailor it to what you need for your group. But there are things like morale that get improved. Your employees feel much more appreciated because you're taking time, you're actually asking them, okay, how can I help you succeed? What is it that you need in order to be successful and have fun and enjoy your work? It really helps those new employees hit the ground running when they come in, knowing how the team operates and contributing to how the team operates. So there are a lot of intangible results that come from it as well. But it is very convenient to be able to measure a team like development because there is that dollar that you can track. I think we've got time for maybe one more question if there are any more questions out there. Up here? Ah, yes, right here.
So I wondered if you would recommend the Berkman for a board, or if there's another tool that's effective for that. And then I also wondered about the colors, and because I don't know much about the Berkman. Can can somebody end up being a different color? Or do you have to be in a quadrant?
Like, can you end up off the grid?
Yeah, I really do like purple.
You would be the gold square.
No, I'm sincere in my question because I wondered if it happened.
Yeah.
And maybe that says something about my personality because I don't want to be.
Yeah, so I would highly recommend it for a board, any group that wants to work better together. People use it outside of work as well in relationships. But the answer to your question, perfect for board in terms of you will end up with a score on the grid somewhere. Now, sometimes what happens is people will end up right in the center, and where all those four corners come together, which means you're going to pull from all four tendencies, all colors, and so your tendencies and preferences aren't going to be as distinct because you're pulling from all. Or under stress, we have someone, I think not on the development team in SPN, who's right at the four corners on the stress, and we joke that this person is leveraging all four stress behaviors when they go through stress. But you will end up with a score somewhere on that grid. Yeah. Did that answer your question? Okay. All right. Great. Okay. Well, we are. Any last quick question? We are running out of time, I believe. All right. So we're going to close it out with that, with our last question there from the chairman. And thank you so much for taking time to do this. And one more time, thank you so much to the development.